You're at a party, people getting to know each other, trying to have a good time, and then it happens. Somebody says something that makes everybody freeze. A couple of people laugh nervously. 3 seconds later, somebody says to the offender, "You did not just say that." I'm usually surprised by the reaction. I look around saying, "What? That was wrong?" My friends have always called that a Joe moment. Some people will be offended. Others will say, "No, no, no. That is exactly why." Viewers' discretion is advised.
Is voting a right?
It's a right for citizens, yes.
Do you have to do anything to do it?
Yes.
What do you have to do?
It depends on the state.
What do you have to do?
Sometimes you have to be at least 18 years old.
What do you have to do?
And
Keep
in
going.
some
Test. Sorry. Oh, God. All right. We're all good now? We all good now? We all good? All right. What I was saying was this. Gosh, I had such a good intro. I can't do that again. You can't do that twice. It's just like I don't do these. I don't prepare these things. I just come out and boom, 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 fly off. What I was saying was that tonight's show is all about debunking idiocy, debunking something that people hear it and they're like, "Oh wow, that's so deep, that's so insightful." And when they hear that, and this the number one purveyor from the left who does this, I see clip after clip after clip that just drops into my feed. I don't know why. I've never liked any of these videos. I never hit the like button on any of these, but it continually drops into my feed. And this dropped into my feed literally 3 minutes before I started the show, was this clip with Jon Stewart. And it's like every time there's like some stupid clip of him talking to someone, everyone's like on the left seems to be like, oh, you got him. Oh, so good, so good. And I'm like, that was the most illogical stupidity in the world. It's like no logic. It doesn't make any sense. And this one popped in my feed like 3 minutes before I started. I was just like, this has to be a joke. This has to be a joke. So let's start this over again. I think you guys did hear it, but let's start it over again. God, that's so annoying.
Is voting a right?
It's a right for citizens, yes.
Do you have to do anything to do it?
Yes.
What do you have to do?
It depends on the state.
What do you have to do?
Sometimes you have to be at least 18 years old.
What do you have to do?
And
Keep
in some
going.
places you have to have a government issued ID.
What do you have to? You have to
You have to be on the voter rolls.
register. You have to register. So you have to register to a right. Is that an infringement?
Does the right to voting say shall not be infringed?
Oh, so this is
Bad answer. Bad answer. Bad answer. That's not the right answer. That is not the right answer. And we can sit here and argue about which is a more basic right, the right to vote or the right to defend yourself, which is essentially what the Second Amendment is about. It's a bad answer, though. There are much, much better answers. But I understand. You're sitting there in the hot seat with Jon Stewart, cameras in your face. It's not easy to give the right answer in the moment. It's a bad answer. And Jon Stewart, who has spent decades doing this, capitalizes on the bad answer.
just a semantic argument now.
It's not really a semantic argument. It's not really a semantic argument because technically Constitution is what the Constitution is. So when it says shall not be infringed, okay. Now it's fair to call it a semantic argument in the sense that the 14th Amendment comes along and basically says you can't discriminate against anyone, which is implying that, everyone should have the right to vote. And this certainly has been interpreted by the courts as saying you can't discriminate against anyone's right to vote. It's a bad answer. There are much, much better answers. And everyone's like, aha, gotcha. But it's not the best answer at all. And I'm going to give you that.
No, it's not.
You believe voting rights can be infringed because it doesn't say specifically shall not be infringed.
Is it an infringement upon a 17-year-old's right to vote since they don't have that right to vote?
No.
Oh, it's not an infringement on them?
No, absolutely not.
Why not?
See, that's a dumb argument also, because you're going to say that 2-year-old should be allowed to get guns? Can't stop playing that game. Also not a good argument. He's floundering and fishing for good answers. There's a much more powerful answer here.
Because you're the one making the argument, not me. I'm saying even rights have responsibilities, and that within those responsibilities are responsibilities and order. Otherwise, it's chaotic.
The very simple answer is this. In an ideal setting, we would not have registration for voting. You would not need registration for voting. If, in fact, that we could rely that there would never be any people who would be, cheating the system and voting multiple times in multiple jurisdictions, that would be ideal. But the reality is it's impossible to have a voting system. One system is impossible to have without a registration. The other is very clearly possible to have without a registration. In both circumstances, it would be ideal if in both circumstances there was zero registration. That would be ideal. However, seeing as how it is literally impossible to have a free functioning election where everyone is going to vote, everyone who is entitled to vote is going to vote once and not more than once, we have to have a voter registration in order to ensure that. However, having a registration for guns, doesn't enable people to actually have the right to get guns. That's not creating that right. All it's doing is creating a tracking system for the government to track us. Plenty of people get guns without ever registering them. And you want to know how we know it works without having registration? Because you're arguing that there should be registration. Obviously, it works without it. It's not that people are unable to get their hands on guns. It doesn't make there's no sense at all. The reason you want to have a registration has nothing to do with people owning the guns. It's a matter that you feel like if people own guns and they're registered, if everyone is required to be registered, in that case, we'd be able to keep track of crimes that happen down the road. But that's not a matter of enabling people to carry out the right of gun ownership. That's a matter of being able to try and police something after the fact in an ideal setting, which it clearly would not be ideal because most people commit crimes with guns aren't using a registered gun. So it's not doing anything in that score. The only thing it's actually doing is just basically forcing people who are intending to be law-abiding citizens to state the nature of whatever weapons they have to the government, which doesn't serve any purpose at all. Quite the contrary. But the registration for voting actually enables us to say, oh, okay, you're in this jurisdiction. These are the different candidates you can vote for, different slate of candidates you can vote for. You wouldn't know that yourself. And so you have to give your address, you have to give your location. This way they know the county, the town, which officials you're voting for. It's not just your president that you're voting for, but even if it was just the president, the point is you could not possibly have a feasible voting system without registration. You very clearly can have a feasible system where people own guns that are unregistered. But the reason for the registration is completely opposite. One is to keep the system functioning, and the other is to be able to basically try and limit and inhibit people from being able to have that system and function for them. That's two opposite goals. You're trying to use the word registration, say, oh, registration for this, registration for that. It's ridiculous. By that logic, you say, if everyone's allowed to chew gum, right? So you should register to chew gum. Why not? Why shouldn't you register to chew gum? Why? You have a basic right to it. You have a basic right to chew gum. No one can stop you from chewing gum. From chewing gum, let's force everyone to register before they buy a pack of Wrigley's. And if they're getting spearmint, oh my God, they're gonna have fresh breath that's just shooting at people. It's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. But the left goes crazy, like, oh my God, he got him. Oh, he got him. That was so good. It's so stupid. You have to look at the purpose of the registration. But when you're sitting there in the hot seat, I'm not blaming this Oklahoma State senator for not coming up with this answer, because you're sitting there in the hot seat. It's very easy to sit here where I'm sitting as Monday morning quarterback and say that's not the best answer. But because these videos tend to go viral, I think it's a good idea for me to basically break down the flaw in the argument that Jon Stewart is making on a regular basis. All right. That's all I have to say about that. What we got? You're muted. Okay, I got that. Joe's channel is under attack. It's always under attack. Guys, my channel is under attack. By semantics means what words mean. Yes, it's a semantic argument. Yeah, I know. It's just let's pretend that the Constitution doesn't say that. And the newest argument that I've heard is that it's basically only applying to militias. I don't even know what. It's the stupidest thing in the world. Okay. There's no end to desperation. Literally no end at all. Why is it some destinations won't get comments? I don't know what that means. Oh, it's not happening my Rumble. Why don't I see my super chat thing here? That's very annoying. All right. Put on the glasses here. There's a couple more topics I wanted to cover before I get to the main thing. I'm not going to go into the whole O'Keefe video with Dylan Mulvaney because honestly, it's kind of a nothing burger. It's very exciting that he managed to make Dylan Mulvaney feel uncomfortable for a few minutes. All right. It's really a bit of a nothing burger. So I'm not going to get into that. But if you missed it, James O'Keefe dropped a video where he found Dylan Mulvaney in a hotel lobby and basically asked him, what do you think about the fact that a lot of these transgender women who are going to women's prison seem to be raping female prisoners? How do you feel about that? And he basically said nothing and ran away and was protected by some hotel security and taken into an elevator. A big surprise on that. Okay, two more things I wanted to cover. Number one, I'm only covering this very quickly because I've had no fewer than 3 different people in completely separate circumstances sharing this with me and asking me to comment on it or asking if I saw this. So I look at that as asking me to comment on it. And that's this story over here, which is the Montana lawmakers pass a bill to ban TikTok, which now is Montana. Oh, you still can't see it. Let's make it let's do it like this. You can really see it. It's a little bigger. Montana lawmakers passed a bill to ban TikTok. Montana legislators passed a bill banning TikTok in the state and preventing app stores from offering it for download. The bill, SB 419, now goes to the desk of Montana Governor Greg Gianforte for approval. TikTok is expected to take action to prevent the ban from becoming law. That'd be interesting to see. That would be an interesting legal action to watch. Montana legislators approved a bill on Friday that would ban TikTok from being offered in the state. In a 54-43 vote, the bill now goes to Montana Republican Governor Greg Gianforte for approval. TikTok, which is owned by China's ByteDance, which means owned by China, is likely to take action to prevent the bill from becoming law. If implemented, it would be the first statewide ban of its kind. I do think that if TikTok is going to take legal action, they have a fair claim here as habeas corpus. You can't write a law that's basically targeting one individual. It's questionable whether you could write a law that's questioned. I'm curious how you could write a law that would be banning one company. One company seems to be like an alternate form of a person. It does seem to be on some questionable legal grounds. I'm not saying that it won't withstand legal scrutiny. I'm simply saying that's something that would need to be vetted out. Is there a distinction between habeas corpus as it relates to an individual person versus a corporation? Now, I guess in theory, you can say I'm banning TikTok, not the corporation. The corporation can act here. But it does still seem targeting against, if it's the main asset of the corporation, which it certainly is, it does seem as if it's a little strange. Like imagine the state of Montana passed a law, the state of California passed a law, no good logic here. It'd be like, you really do that? Could you really do that? Is that road we want to start going down? I don't know. To me, that's a very, very dangerous road. And look, I've gone on record. I even saw a short that Legal Mindset made of me saying that TikTok is hot garbage, and I stand by that, and I will always stand by that. It is hot garbage. Nobody ever learned anything from TikTok. It is complete. At best, it's a complete waste of time. At worst, it's basically like what's the word I want to use? I know the word I want to use, but I don't want to use that word. It's a form of entertainment crack. That's what it is. At best, it's entertainment crack. Like, we're going to give you something that's going to feed your ADHD-addled mind by giving you little 30-second clips, 60-second clips, not require you to actually engage your brain. And it's crack for your mind, which is obviously less dangerous than crack, but in the short term, but it is somewhat addictive, and kids end up wasting their lives on it. So to me, that's not a reason to ban it. And whatever this is an interesting question I just noticed here. No. But to be fair, I wouldn't spend $12 on a Taylor Swift ticket either. I'm sure most people don't agree with me on that. So I'm probably the wrong person to ask that question to. Every once in a while, I see a weird comment. Just dropping a couple shekels. Well, thank you, Vianticus Prime. I haven't seen you in a while. It's good to see you. Would banning TikTok be a law of attainder? No, I don't think so. Anyway, let's go forward here. The Montana bill cited likely beyond Montana, federal lawmakers have for months been pushing an act that would ban TikTok across the country. ByteDance won't sell its stake in the viral video app. That threat presents severe potential challenges to TikTok, and the company has invested millions of dollars into combating the effort. The Montana bill cited likely Chinese surveillance and the potential theft of state intellectual property as some of the impetus behind the ban. What? Theft of state intellectual property? Chinese surveillance? Like, I don't understand this whole argument. The whole logic people are saying, what does that even mean? They're going to know, like, which stupid challenge Americans in Montana, like American kids in Montana are doing. What the heck are they going to learn from this? Like, to me, this whole thing just reeks that when we're given some bogus reason, when we're given a bogus reason for something, that means there's a real reason that the powers that be do not want us to know about. I'm very, very suspicious about this whole thing. Like, this whole terrifying fear about China and TikTok, like they're the only Chinese company that's operating here. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And they're the biggest threat to America from those Chinese companies. Not really buying that either. Not really buying it. There's got to be something more here. There's got to be something that's really rubbing the powers that be wrong about TikTok, and we don't really know what it is. I mean, listen to this. I mean, what the hell does this even mean? The Montana bill cited likely Chinese surveillance and potential theft of state intellectual property. That's the big fear? Like, this is are you afraid of that? Do you think that we're being compromised because of TikTok? I want to take a poll on that. I don't even understand. I've got to get to the bottom of this. Let me see if you guys actually buy that. Start a poll. Is potential theft of state secrets. Chinese surveillance. Oh, I don't like that phrase, just enable China. Enable threatening Chinese surveillance. Because I don't think, they have Chinese surveillance of whatever nonsense, 14-year-olds, whether the hot color hair is blue or bubblegum pink. But I don't. Yes. And yes. No, they're harmless. So there's no confusion. I don't like the way I word some of my stuff sometimes. All right, so there you go. There's your poll. Go get him. Go get him. Get him. Get him. Wow, a lot of you are saying ban them out of the gate. Just because it makes your kids stupid. I mean, seriously. Most of our education system is designed to make our kids stupid. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm not understanding this. Should a law be enacted, mobile app stores like providers like Apple and Google would be required to disable TikTok downloads from within Montana, and TikTok would be prohibited from offering the platform to state residents. Ban would take effect on January 1, 2024. Quote, TikTok stealing information and data from users and its ability to share that data with the Chinese Communist Party unacceptably infringes on Montana's right to privacy. Now, what does that mean, stealing of information? I want to know more about that. That's a very vague phrase. Montana is one of the least populated states in the U.S., with just over 1 million residents. Prior to public office, GM Forte ran Right Now Technology, a software company founded in 1997. Oracle acquired Right Now in 2012 for $1.5 billion. As of 2018, GM Forte had an estimated net worth of $189 million. Wow, he's doing well. GM Forte is doing well. In 2020, Oracle agreed to provide back-end technology to TikTok as part of an arrangement to keep the app at the time from being banned in the U.S. So he's basically from a company that's not, it was too keen about banning TikTok. And they're the cloud hosting service for all TikTok usage in the U.S. I don't know that he's signing this bill anytime soon. Customers in Montana won't be fined if they fail to abide by the ban or evade it, but companies, including TikTok, face a $10,000 fine per violation if they're found to have skirted the ban. Shelley Vance, a Republican, sponsored the bill. Vance did not immediately respond to requests for comments. TikTok obviously opposes the bill. Quote, the bill's champions have admitted that they have no feasible plan for operationalizing this attempt to censor American voices, and that's the bill's constitutionality will be decided by the courts. So that's the other issue, is whether this is affecting free speech. I don't know if that's going to be a legal hurdle for them. I don't know. To me, if we write a law stopping you from being able to use a place that you could express yourself, is that Congress impeding your rights to free speech? To me, it doesn't feel like it is, but I'd want to look into more case law on that. Let's check out the actual text of the law. It's a very short law. If it was long, I would not be doing this, but I looked at it and it's really short. It's a really short law. By the way, speaking of going through legal stuff, because one of the things I don't like doing is I don't like having long, drawn-out things, especially to drop a long, drawn-out legal thing. I know that it just makes people want to cry. And my goal here in my show is to never make you want to cry while watching me. I think that's I don't have high aspirations for this show. Very, very low. Very low. One of my low aspirations is to never make you want to slit your own wrists. So if I could do that, I feel like I'm accomplishing something. So and I know that if I engage in very lengthy legal analysis, it starts making people want to reach for the Xanax or whatever. So definitely not too many of those. It's definitely not doing that. But I want to show you before we even do this. This is how short this thing is. That's it. That's the whole thing. So we're going to look at this. This is 2023 Montana Legislature Senate Bill number 419. Very short. Bill for an act entitled an act banning TikTok in Montana. They're very clear, very express. Prohibiting a mobile application store from offering TikTok applications to Montana users, providing for penalties, providing for enforcement authority, and definitions. All right. Whereas the People's Republic of China is an adversary of the United States, so I'm down with that, and Montana, okay, and has an interest in gathering information about Montanans. Probably not exclusively, but yes, they have an interest in gathering whatever intel they get. Montana companies and the intellectual property of users to engage in corporate and international espionage. And whereas TikTok is a wholly owned subsidiary of ByteDance, a Chinese corporation, and whereas this part is this part is not actually part of it. This is just setting up the law. It's not whenever you see the whereas clauses, it's not actually part of the law. It's just meant to help you understand the law, purpose, nature thereof. Whereas the China exercises control and oversight over ByteDance, like other Chinese corporations, and can direct the company to share user information, including real-time physical locations of users. Real-time physical locations of users. So that enables China to figure out where to bomb Montana, in theory. Okay. All right. I guess it could be doing that. Whereas TikTok gathers significant information from its users, accessing data against their will to share with the People's Republic of China. And whereas TikTok fails to remove and may even promote dangerous content that directs minors to engage in dangerous activities, including but not limited to throwing objects at moving automobiles. This is turning it into a free speech issue. This is opening up the door to basically say we don't like the nature of your speech. This whereas clause makes it more of a problem because you're saying we're trying to limit the type of speech that you're having. Now, I guess you obviously can stop people from engaging in speech, which is going to lead to, under Brandenburg, if it's going to lead to something that's going to basically lead foreseeably to an imminent cause of harm, which is interesting. Whereas TikTok fails to remove and promote dangerous content and directs minors to engage in dangerous activities, including not limited to throwing objects and moving automobiles, taking excessive amounts of medication. Is that really true? Lighting a mirror on fire and then attempting to extinguish it using only one's body parts. Inducing unconsciousness through oxygen deprivation. Cooking chicken in NyQuil. I feel like that episode of The Office, like this is, I feel like I'm reading the transcript or the script for The Office when like Michael is reading off a list of complaints that Dwight has about Jim for different pranks that Jim pulled on Dwight. And yeah. One time Jim made me cook chicken in NyQuil. Jim made me bang my own head into the phone. This is, wow. Cooking chicken in NyQuil. Pouring hot wax on a user's face. Attempting to break an unsuspecting passerby's skull by tripping him or her into landing face first into a hard surface. Placing metal objects in electrical outlets, swerving cars at high rates of speed, smearing human feces on toddlers, licking doorknobs and toilet seats to place oneself at risk of contracting CV, attempting to climb stacks of milk crates, which I don't really know how that's. I saw the milk crate challenge. Shooting passerbys with air rifles, loosening lug nuts on vehicles, and stealing utilities from public places. Wow. I would love to watch to read the findings report. Like, wow. All right. I'm getting. All right. I'm starting to see their outrage. They're like, here's what it's getting our kids to do. It's turning our kids into, and they're already lunatics beforehand. It's turning them into like psychopathic lunatics. That's a pretty compelling list. Not going to kid you. Smearing human feces on toddlers. What the heck is wrong with people? Whereas TikTok stealing information data from users and its ability to share that data with the Chinese Communist Party unacceptably infringes on Montana's right to privacy. And whereas TikTok's continued operation in Montana serves as a valuable tool to the people to China to conduct corporate and international espionage in Montana. I don't really understand that. It may allow the People's Republic of China to track real-time locations of public officials. I don't know how that, I guess if it's on your phone and it's like working while, oh, okay. And other individuals adverse to China's Communist Party's interests. And whereas TikTok's allowance and promotion of dangerous challenges threatens the health and safety of Montanans. Section 1. TikTok may not operate within the territorial jurisdiction of Montana. An entity violates this prohibition when any of the following occurs within the territorial jurisdiction: the operation of TikTok by the company or users, or they took out B, the offering of TikTok by an internet service provider because they didn't want to get Oracle in trouble. They were like, Greg's not going to go along with the whole putting Oracle at risk. The option is to download TikTok mobile application by a mobile application store An entity that violates a provision of this section is liable in the amount of $10,000 for each discrete violation, is liable for an additional $10,000 each day thereafter. It is an affirmative defense to this section that the violating entity could not have reasonably known that the violation occurred within the territorial jurisdiction of Montana. Penalties under this section do not apply to law enforcement activities, national security interests and activities, security. So the police are okay. The police can have it all they want. Or essential government use is permitted by the governor on the information technology system. Penalties in this state do not apply to users of TikTok, so that they want to make sure we don't want our voters getting mad at us, the ones who like TikToks, that they're going to have to pay fines. So they specifically carve them out. Department of Justice shall enforce the provisions of the section. Good luck doing that. Good luck. Good luck. Department of Justice. What are they supposed to do? Hey, you! Stop watching TikTok. What are they supposed to do? How are you going to do that? How is this going to be? How do you have a law? How is this going to be implemented? It's a nice aspiration, I guess. Using the section, the following definition will apply. Discrete violation means each time a user accesses TikTok, is offered ability to access TikTok, or is offered the ability to download TikTok. Here are the different definitions. All right. And there you go. Section 2 is an intent to codify as integral part of Title 30, and that's it. Each part of this act is severable. Not that there's a lot of parts. They probably have this in every law. If any part is invalid, illegal, and unenforceable, all valid parts are made in effect. Contingent voidness. This act is void if TikTok is acquired by or sold to a company that is not incorporated in any other country designed as a foreign adversary at the time TikTok is sold or acquired. So this is an automatically triggering self-voidness provision, basically saying if after we pass, presumably if after we pass this law, TikTok is sold, this entire act would just go up in flames. Yeah. So let me see where you guys stand on this. Where's our poll at? Where's our poll? All right. So our poll right now comes in at, most of you think that they're a threat. Wow. 90% of you think, 89% of you think that they're a serious threat. 48% saying yes, ban them. 41% saying yes, but don't ban them. And 11% saying no, they're harmless. I'm surprised. Not going to kid you. I think that there's another reason here. I think there's a whole other thing going on here. That's my take. I really think there's another whole other thing that's going on here that they don't want us to know about. I'm in favor of banning TikTok forcing a sale in principle, but bills such as the Restrict Act are blatant attempts at legalized tyranny. Oh, yeah. I mean, the Restrict Act, I've been screaming against the Restrict Act since I first heard about it. And yeah, the Restrict Act, that is just awful. That is terrible. If you're unfamiliar with the Restrict Act, my God, anyone who signed off on that should basically, we should burn them in effigy before we have them removed from office. That is a disaster. That was an outright disaster. Drop Erica, good logic. You probably won't cry. Joe 2023. That's going to be my tagline. My show. Watch my show. You probably won't cry. Very low aspirations. You probably won't cry. Visage. If they can pass laws on guns, why not EP? Both are products. Laws are targeting these companies' products, in my opinion, seems like what governments already do. It's a pretty libertarian perspective. Also, ban means no more stupid TikTok videos. Some of them are fun. I'm not going to kid you. I've made one or two TikTok videos. I have. The last one I made was, I think, a year ago, where I said, okay, I'm going to start making more TikTok videos. And then I was like, fine, I'll start making some TikTok videos. And that was like a year ago. And I haven't made another one since. I don't remember what I have on my TikTok channel. All right. What's your view of Project Texas, though? What's Project Texas? Is that something I'm supposed to know about? Yeah, I'm curious. TikTok tries to sell Project Texas as it fights for survival. Project Texas's aim is to safeguard user data and protect U.S. national security interests, according to TikTok. What? I don't know. I'm not looking at that right now. Like I said, I only covered this story because so many people want me to cover it. I'm very hesitant to be banning anyone. I don't like it. I just don't like it. I don't like it. The only exception to that. And I'm hesitant to read this story because I don't know how long this story is. It doesn't look that long. This is going to get me down the whole Jack Teixeira road. I know this is going to get me down the whole Jack Teixeira story, which I've been like putting off, and I was like, I'll cover that next week. Let me talk about that next week. Can I talk about Jack Teixeira like maybe on Monday or Tuesday? Yeah, I want to know more about Jack Teixeira, and I'm terrified that if I cover this thing that I found, which was a story that was written yesterday, which I think is important, that's going to bring me into Jack Teixeira. I'm going to do it anyway, against my better judgment. This is the last thing I'm going to do before we get into the video. Everything we told about the war in Ukraine is a lie. That's why I was like, I see a title like that. I'm like, how can I not cover this when I basically have been screaming against our involvement in the war in Ukraine since before we went in there? I've been so strongly against our involvement, against sending them money and all this stuff. And everything that I've seen about this war ever since then has made my voice grow. It has basically shown me be so prophetic on this topic. Following the leak of classified documents exposing, this is from Huey Lawson, and it's starting to go around Twitter, this daily letter from Huey Lawson. Following the leak of classified documents exposing the Biden administration's corrupt lies, the administration and the media are determined to convict the whistleblower. Have you guys heard of Huey Lawson? I never heard of him before this evening. Look at this stupid picture. How many times has this been doctored? And what the hell is that chip in his brain here? What the hell is that? You see that? You guys see that? Isn't that? What the hell is that? That's supposed to be a mole? What is that? God. Attorney General Merrick Garland announced on Thursday the FBI had arrested 21-year-old Air National Guardsman Jack Teixeira in connection with their investigation into the leak of classified military documents reported last week. The fact that they already have a suspect in custody for this embarrassing leak is quite telling. They're still baffled about who is behind the politically convenient Supreme Court leak regarding the Dobbs decision so many months ago. But the difference between this leak and that other leak is that this one must be about the leaker instead of the content of the leak. And that's because the content of this leak is an expose of the Biden administration's utter incompetence, dishonesty, and corruption. The documents reportedly contain a host of sensitive information relevant to ongoing events involving the conflict in Ukraine. According to New York Times, documents contain a description of Ukraine's struggling air defenses and plans for their coming counteroffensive campaign. All of that information could have a significant impact on the dynamics of this war. Many Americans are skeptical about whether all the money we spent on Ukraine is actually serving our interests. But if the Biden administration insists on spending billions of taxpayer dollars on this war, They should at least be competent enough to avoid a tactical blunder of such magnitude. And they could have avoided if they weren't so corrupt and dishonest that a whistleblower felt obligated, as he certainly was, to expose their lies. We've been told since the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine that it is not a proxy war between the U.S. and Russia. We've been told that there are no U.S. forces deployed in the war zone. And we've been told that Ukraine is winning. That's the narrative that has been pushed by the media and our government on repeat for more than a year. But the leaked documents completely shattered that narrative. The leak revealed that there are U.S. forces deployed in Ukraine. If that's really true, oh my God, that is impeachable. We should be removing anyone who's associated with this. In fact, this was confirmed on Wednesday by John Kirby in an interview with Fox News. This is not only a proxy war between U.S. and Russia, we are quite literally in the middle of a hot war with Russia, a war which has not been approved by Congress as our laws would require. That makes it a crime. That's borderline, because we've been involved in hot wars in Vietnam, and that was not considered a crime. They just label it as a police action. So I think that Mr. Laugesen here is a little bit... It's pushing the envelope a little bit. The documents also reveal that Ukrainian forces are in dire straits. According to documents, there have been a total of 16,000 to 17,500 Russian casualties and as many as 71,000 Ukrainian casualties. Oh, imagine my surprise. Who could have seen that? Who could have seen that? That bunch of ragtag forces trying to hold off, I don't know, one of the top 5 armies in the world is basically getting crushed. But they're plucky. They're plucky. They're plucky. And I'm not rooting for Russia to win this war. I'm simply saying, I don't care. Why do we care? Why does anybody care? For the love of God. And one more idiot comes forward like they're the voice of democracy. I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna get like an air siren to just basically like because it's stupid. We don't even have a democracy here in our own country. We're worrying about democracies in other countries. Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. It's never been about that. Never been about that. I don't care. If Ukraine manages somehow to miraculously hold off Putin, God bless them. God bless them. Why is it our job to prop them up and make sure that they do okay? Why is it more our job than, I don't know, Germany's job? They happen to be a lot closer. They're a lot closer. Why isn't it Poland's job? Why isn't it France's job? Sweden, Great Britain. Why is it our responsibility? Aren't those democracies? Oh, you know what we should look at? We should look at Heilig of Finland and Switzerland. Those Norway. Oh, yeah. Oh, the whole Scandinavian front there, because that's basically the bastion of where socialism apparently thrives so well. Why don't we get these socialist countries to help Ukraine stand up against Russia? Where's their Deutsche Mark or whatever rupees they use in Scandinavian countries? Why does it have to be American dollars? I don't understand. And now apparently American troops. I don't understand this. Why is this our role? Why is this our job? This is all the legacy of Woodrow Wilson. Well, we have to be interventionist everywhere. So stupid. So dumb. General Mark Milley, Yimach Shemo V'zichro, stated publicly in November that Russia had lost well over 100,000 soldiers. He's a liar. He's been a liar. He was exposed as a liar for 2 years ago, but the left holds him up as some sort of bastion of integrity because he hated on Donald Trump. These documents aren't even old. According to New York Times reporter David Sanger, the documents were mere weeks old at the time of the leak. Furthermore, just 2 weeks ago, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin made the assertion that Ukraine was winning the war while he was testifying before Congress. That is not true. Ukraine is not winning the war, and Austin knew that when he made the claim to the contrary. Lying before Congress is a crime. That part is true, Mr. Hugerson. That is correct. In fact, that's what Mark Cohen was convicted of. And now the administration is asking the media to cover all this up, of course. In a recent press conference, John Kirby asked reporters to refrain from reporting on the leak, saying, quote, "It has no business, if you don't mind me saying, on the front pages of newspapers or on television. It's not intended for public consumption and should not be out there." Why not? Why shouldn't we know what's happening with our American dollars? You know what? If we're investing tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars into Ukraine, should we actually get some accurate feedback as to how successful that investment is? This is like the stupidest thing in the world. It's like they pretend that it's not our money. Like we have no business. You have no right to know how whether or not this is a losing cause. Imagine someone came to you and forced you to pay up $10,000 to invest into some company, and then like a year later, they refuse to tell you how the company is doing. What kind of asinine perspective is that? I don't understand any of this. And people seem to be like, people on the left are so totally fine with it. Why? Because I don't know, Zelensky apparently is like the modern day Martin Luther King or something. It's the government's job to keep classified documents out of the public eye, and it's the job of the press to report information to the public. But the Biden administration failed, as a result of their own corruption, to keep these documents secret. So they want the press to do it for them, and the press is doing just that. The mainstream media has focused most of their energy on making this story about the source of the leak rather than the content of the documents. However, the content of the documents has proven to be far more important than the source of the leak. In fact, we should be thanking the source for providing us with the information we now have. I'm going to try and get my hands on these documents so I could actually, to see, I don't know, if is possession of these documents a crime? I'm not looking to break any laws, but I'd like to actually see what it is that was supposedly revealed. If it's now available for public consumption, I should probably sit down and actually read through it. If the administration wants to argue that the American public doesn't have a right to know that U.S. forces are fighting in Ukraine, they're simply wrong. We certainly do have a right to know whether our leaders are waging a legal war and committing perjury before Congress. Jack Teixeira simply recognizes that. Unfortunately for him and the rest of the country, it's unlikely that anybody in the Biden administration will face any consequences for their crimes. The only person who will be going to jail is the whistleblower for the crime of exposing them. All right, I'll give him a like. Yeah, they made me subscribe. All right. Well, there you go. Oh, does he? Grifty? Robert Gouvet has a good breakdown of the leaks? I'm going to try and check that out. I trust his reporting on stuff. He's great. Huge fan of Robert. All right. I don't want to get more into that story, but I expect to be covering it more on this channel as I have a chance to get acclimated to it. You have to understand that this whole leak story, it broke while I was basically on holiday and Passover and jumping around from one place to another. So I think it merits more attention, but I haven't had a chance to really dissect it yet. So I want to basically sit down for a couple hours and go through, figure out what I can take from it before I actually weigh in on it. All right, let's get to this video. Which I've been waiting to. Now, before I get into this video, I have 53 minutes. Okay. So before I get into this video, I just want to make clear one thing. I only watched like the first 5 minutes of it. I have a rudimentary understanding of what this is about. And this is basically, there's a book that was written by Peter Singer called Famine, Affluence and Morality. And one of the major findings of this book, it's going to be laid out in the intro to this. This is a channel by a guy named Jeffrey Kaplan. I've watched one or two of his things before. He happens to be a pretty good channel. In fact, I'm going to hit subscribe on him because I like his work. Now, let me get to the super chats before any remaining super chats that I have out there. It gets TikTok and local servers, nothing outside. Okay. Joe, off topic. How can I force my 95-year-old Ukrainian-born Jewish mom into assisted living? It's a little off topic. don't know. I don't know, Lita. What am I supposed to tell you? You want to know, like, does she want to go into assisted living? You're asking me how you can convince her to do it, or you're asking me like what programs there are available for that? Which I honestly don't know anything about that either. But I don't know how to guide you on that. Like, I don't even know where to begin. I would tell you to begin the same place anyone else would tell you, which is Google, but I don't have any particular insight into this issue. And I'm still not even sure whether the question is how you get her to go along with it, or you actually, what process is involved in getting anyone signed up for assisted living. So, yeah, I wish I could help you more, because I know I didn't do anything to help you, but I wish you best of luck with that. It's probably a difficult transition for anybody. Possessing these documents isn't illegal, but don't show them on screen, as viewers with clearance or going for clearance aren't allowed to see them. Okay. Well, I appreciate that heads up. Thank you, Resto Town. Thank you much. All right. Let's get into this video. I'm very excited about this video. I like this guy's work. Jeffrey Kaplan. This is Jeffrey Kaplan here. This is Jeffrey Kaplan. Let's get to work. All right. Again, so I don't know anything about this theory other than that one of its conclusions are what you see there in the headline: ordinary people are evil. I do not believe this to be true. I am very confident this is not true. In fact, I'm positive this is not true, which means that there must be steps along the way here, that there are flaws, probably with various givens that they're going to start with, which I'm going to disagree with. But I sort of have taken this challenge on that I am going to debunk this while watching it for the first time. A little daunting, but I feel up for the task. So here we go. And Sam's here. Can you do my taxes, please? It's a little late. It's a little late. All right, here we go. Actually, give me 30 seconds before I start. Just 30 seconds. I'll be right back. All right. Sorry about that. Let's get to work. Oh, there's no volume.
It's a very radical conclusion, and the problem is it's very hard to see what's wrong with the argument. The argument seems like a good one, and it has seemed that way to everyone who read this paper since 1972.
50 years ago. Seems like a good argument for 50 years, about to be destroyed by yours truly tonight. Wish me luck. I don't know the argument yet. That's what makes this daunting, but I feel confident I'm the right guy for the task.
Today we're talking about an absolutely revolutionary paper published by a philosopher named Peter Singer in 1972. The name of the paper is Famine, Affluence, and Morality. And the basic idea is that the moral stance that you have, your attitude towards your moral obligations, and the things that you may or may not do in your life, and the attitude that all of your friends and all of your relatives have, the general moral outlook that everyone around you has, is deeply and profoundly wrong. And the crazy thing about this paper is that, on the surface at least, it's very persuasive. Singer seems to be right. It seems to be, once you go through the argument that he lays out, it seems to be that we need to completely rework our entire society.
I have to tell you, by the way, this opening here, it draws me in. Where I'm like, all right, walk me. I want to hear your whole argument here, which is why I actually made it like 5 minutes into this thing, because I'm very curious about, like, you know, especially someone tells me this has like been something that people have accepted for 50 years. This is something that philosophers have basically all can't debunk. I'm like, and it's coming to a conclusion that I know is not true. I know it's an inaccurate conclusion. So I'm like, there's going to be something in the definitions or something in the givens or some step along the way that they're just sort of like glossing past something. And that's what my goal is to identify.
And more specifically, forget about society for a minute. You need to completely rework your life if your life is going to be a moral one. And sort of what makes the paper so radical is that I can say all of these things, that the thesis of the paper is that you need to completely rework your life without knowing anything about you. I know virtually nothing about your life and your moral outlook and your values and the kinds of things that you do on a day-to-day basis. I can basically make some assumptions about my audience, you know, general assumptions. You live in a broadly capitalistic society, let's assume. You know, there are government regulations and that sort of thing. And you live sometime in the beginning-ish of the 21st century. That's basically enough. If that's true of you, then Singer thinks that your whole life needs to be reworked if you're going to live in a morally acceptable way. Okay, if we're going to understand this argument, then we need one distinction to start out. This is a technical distinction, but there's really only one technical term. Here you go. We're talking about the distinction between the supererogatory and the obligatory. Imagine this. You're getting together with
Supererogatory versus obligatory. Okay, there we go.
With a group of friends or coworkers or something like that, and you decide, you know what, this is a pretty early gathering. It's a pretty early meeting. And so wouldn't it be nice if I went and got everyone some coffee and danishes? Because some people are going to be rushing out of their house and they're not going to have time to eat breakfast. And so when everyone shows up, surprise, surprise, there is some coffee and donuts and treats or whatever that you brought for everyone and you paid for. And you're just giving it to them. And you say,
right,
hey guys, I brought these for you. I want you to have them. That act, that action is supererogatory. It's extra. It's super. You didn't have to do it, but it was a really nice thing to do. It was an extra thing that you did, and it was a good thing to do. It was not obligatory. Something is obligatory if you have to do it, right? So if someone is assigned in the group to bring coffee and breakfast to every early morning meeting, and you signed up, you promised, you committed to bringing coffee and breakfast on that day, well then bringing coffee and breakfast is obligatory. And of course it would be nice if everyone thanked you for bringing those things, even if you agreed or promised to do it. It wasn't extra. It was something you had to do. You had committed to it.
All right, so I'm already starting that this premise is mistaken. And the premise that he's saying, if you signed up to do something, now it's obligatory, and accordingly you have to do it. It's not supererogatory. There's a flaw already in this thinking, and the flaw that I'm identifying is when you sign your decision to sign up for it, assuming there was no obligation to sign up for it. That action is the supererogatory part. No one forced you to sign up for it. Who told you to sign up for it? That was something you decided, I'm going to be part of the crew that's actually going to be doing this extra thing and accept this obligation upon myself. That is actually something that would be classified as supererogatory in the way you just defined supererogatory, at least. So and a lot of times we'll take something that is supererogatory and create an obligation behind it. For example, if you pledge, if you're not Amber Heard and you pledge to make a donation somewhere, so that now when you pay that donation off, yes, at the time you're paying it, it's an obligation, but accepting that obligation upon yourself, assuming you were serious when you accepted it and anticipating that you were going to keep that obligation, the acceptance of the obligation is in and of itself supererogatory. So I'm already suspicious about where they're going to draw the lines between supererogatory versus obligatory.
You were obliged to do it. One more example just to bring out this distinction. And this example may date this video. It may give you a sense of when I'm making this video. But anyway, at the time of the recording of this video, there's something going on in supermarkets where when you check out in the supermarket and you're paying for your groceries or whatever, well, there's some of the payment is obligatory, right? You have to pay for the things that you are buying. But then there's this extra payment. They say when you're checking out, they're like, would you like to donate $1 to, and then they name some charity. Would you like to add $1 to your bill here at the supermarket? That additional payment, that's extra. You don't have to do it. It's up to you. It's supererogatory. If you do it, it's good. That's a nice thing that you did, right? But you didn't have to. Supererogatory. That's what that word means. Okay, here's the claim of this paper. The claim is that there are these organizations that exist in the world now in 1972, says Singer, right? And these organizations like Oxfam, right, and UNICEF, these are organizations that take money from people who live in relatively wealthy places on the planet, and they take that money and they use it to do amazing things for people who are suffering under things like famines, right? If there's a famine in some place in the world, there's not enough food and people are literally starving to death. They are dying because they don't have enough food. So someone donates a little bit of money and these organizations take that money, and a very high percentage of that money with a great deal of efficiency gets transported to this other place on the planet where there's a famine and literal people's lives are saved.
No, he just said that the money is transported with a great deal of efficiency. That is sometimes true, and unfortunately sometimes not true, and that's part of the problem that you have when you're talking about. And I'm not specifically citing a problem with, let's say, Oxfam specifically. I don't know anything about the efficiency of Oxfam, but a lot of these charitable organizations end up being more like the Clinton Foundation, where you send them money and very small proportion of it, if any, ends up getting to the destination. That has turned people cynical into actually giving money because they're like, well, how do I know that it's actually going to be doing the work that I'm committing to do? When he talked earlier about those donations that they have for various charities, again, that same question clicks in. Is it a charity that I would otherwise support? That I think that this is actually a good thing. A lot of these organizations that label themselves as being charitable are promoting positions or agendas or for things that I would never want to promote. I think are potentially harmful to society. And also, even if they are beneficial, I'd want to know, A, it's beneficial, and B, that it's something that the efficiency of the transport of money is actually being done in a way that is genuinely efficient rather than 70% going to overhead.
Normally, you and I and all of your relatives and all of your friends, everyone in our society, in our broader society, we think of these sorts of acts, giving charity in this way, giving money to Oxfam or UNICEF or whatever, we think of these things as supererogatory. Giving to charity is supererogatory. It's nice, it's good, but you don't have to do it. If on any given occasion you don't do it, you're not a bad person. It's not like you failed to live up to some obligation that you had. Singer says, no. Here's an argument that proves, Singer thinks, that giving to charity, giving extra money to famine relief, if you're affluent, if you have extra money, is something that you must do. You must do it in the same way that you must not murder, or you must catch someone if they're falling and you can just reach out your arms and catch them and save them. You must do it. That's the thesis. Okay, so Singer has an argument for this thesis, an argument for this conclusion. But we're going to get to the argument in 1 minute. First, let's just skip to the end of the paper and see his statement of that conclusion. Here's what he says. Here's what Singer says. Because giving money is regarded as an act of charity, it is not thought that there is anything wrong with not giving. The charitable man, or if we want, because this was written in 1972, we can say the charitable person. The charitable person may be praised.
I just unsubscribed. Nope. Can't do that. Can't. Sorry. I like your work, Jeffrey, but I can't. That's it.
But the person who is not charitable is not condemned. People do not feel in any way ashamed or guilty about spending money on new clothes or a new car instead of giving it to famine relief. Indeed, the alternative does not occur to them. What's the alternative? The alternative is not getting those new clothes and not getting that new car, and instead taking that money that you would have spent on new clothes and just, well, wearing your old clothes and taking that money and giving it to an organization that will help people, that will save people who are dying of famine, right? That possibility, the possibility of not spending money on luxuries, does not occur to most people or to virtually anyone. This way of looking at the matter cannot be justified. This
What? that someone who fails to give money away must be condemned. The failure to condemn someone who refuses to give money away is unjustifiable. Well, this sounds like socialism, but let's see what we got.
way of looking at the matter is the way that we all look at the matter. That is, we think that giving money to famine relief is supererogatory. It's nice. It's an extra thing. That cannot be justified. The only thing, according to Singer, that can be justified, and we're going to get to the argument for this conclusion, the only thing that can be justified is the way of thinking where you think that giving to famine relief instead of buying new clothes or a new car or whatever, giving to famine relief is obligatory. That's the only way of thinking that can be justified. The upshot or the punchline is this. If you don't give to famine relief, Singer thinks, you've done something wrong. You've done something evil, bad. Every time you buy new clothes that you don't absolutely need, or you buy a new car when you could just drive your old car, or you buy a cup of coffee that someone else made for you because it's more convenient for them to make it for you and it tastes a little better than if you were to make it at home. Every time you do any of those things, you're doing something wrong. You're doing something bad. We don't think this way. No one in our society, not in 1972, and even though this is a super famous paper, you've maybe never heard of it, and so it didn't seep into the whole society. Even now, right? People don't think that buying new clothes or buying a cup of coffee from a coffee shop is a bad thing to do, an evil thing to do, a wrong thing to do. But Singer thinks that it is. And here's his argument for that conclusion. Okay, here's the argument. Singer doesn't lay out the argument like this with 4 premises and 1 conclusion or anything. I'm pulling these out of the paper, but this is indeed the argument. Here's how it goes. Let's take it one step at a time. 1, if it is in our power to prevent something very bad from happening without thereby sacrificing anything of moral significance, then we must...
What are you labeling as far as moral significance? Then we must morally do it. If it's in our power to prevent something very bad from happening without thereby sacrificing anything of moral significance, then we must morally do it. Okay.
Morally do it. That is, prevent that very bad thing from happening. Okay, that's premise 1. I'll just give you a hint. This is going to be the most controversial claim.
Yeah, it's very controversial. to say, because first of all, the term moral significance is seems to me to be a very amorphous term. And then to assume that we must morally do it, that it's something that's obligatory, is kind of asinine. Meaning, a large part of when you talk about like the moral significance, like he's the moral obligation to do something. So he said earlier, he mentioned something like a situation where someone is falling out of a building, there's an obligation to catch them. Like, I'm not sure I don't agree with that. That is not, quite the contrary. If you could be putting yourself at risk of genuine harm. So if you're putting yourself, I don't think that anyone should be obligated to put themselves at risk of general harm. So it doesn't make it like a morally, and he's implying that's morally obligatory. I mean, with that logic, it's hard to imagine what would be considered supererogatory. I guess getting coffee for someone who doesn't otherwise need coffee is what, if they needed the coffee, then it's not supererogatory. If they don't need the coffee, that's what makes it supererogatory. See, the key here is in the definition of these terms and the application of those definitions. But let's let them go a little further.
Right? It's a very general claim. It's talking about, very bad things. It's got this big category of very bad things, and then it's got this other category of things with, things that you might sacrifice that are not of moral significance. That's another big category. It's a big, grand claim about what you must do morally, and it's a very general claim. So one is going to be the most controversial claim in this argument. So we'll come back to this. If you're looking for this claim, by the way, in the reading, then go to page 235. There's one big paragraph in the middle of page 235, and this claim happens, not phrased exactly like this, but basically like this, at the sort of end of that paragraph. Anyway, let's keep going. Step 2. Hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death are very bad.
Okay.
Those are some examples of very bad things. We see how this is going to connect up with the first premise, right? We've got a bunch of very bad things.
Not all sources of suffering are very bad, by the way. Not all sources of suffering. See, this is another thing which is just sort of thrown in there. Hunger and disease, yes. Not all sources of suffering are very bad things. That's actually not true. In fact, some of them are actually very healthy things. This reeks of intellectual convolution. They have no poetic view of life. The source of human generosity is individual. Liberty starts with one person choosing to do what they feel is right. Okay, and I agree with what you just said there, Bob. But I would say that if one's moral compass is skewed, so in that case, their liberty would be to say, if their moral compass is, let's say, you're living in Rome 2,000 years ago, so in that case, your moral compass is that if you can display your ability to murder other people, that shows you as being a man, a more admirable individual. So I don't think that that's, so then someone engaging them, because that's what feels right to them, doesn't necessarily make it right. Quite the contrary. So I think that, and we can draw back to many warped societies, and we don't have to go back in time. You go back to last week, the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing, as far as like, whether that's a benefit to society or harming society. A lot of the woke policies, I would say, these are people doing what they feel is right. And I think that many of us would disagree with them. So sort of need, when we talk in broad terms, we sort of need to be very careful in how we define things. So enjoying the benefits of your labor in any capacity makes you evil. Sounds like saying it was good old commie. That's what I said. It's pretty. It's also it's somewhat short-sighted if you think about it, because the ability to enjoy what we have rightfully earned motivates us to actually go out and do things and be productive. The ability for someone to actually save and put away money and invest so that they can and work hard, and that work is generally productive for society, which not all work is. But assuming that we're talking about work that's productive for society, they're thereby benefiting society, and the carrot is that they are going to be able to enjoy something, and the implication is that their subsequent enjoyment of it is somehow morally evil, is a very twisted perspective. That's what I think a lot of this can be rooted in. But so far, it seems like that's exactly what this is rooted in.
Things. And it's said in the first premise that if it's in your power, or if it's in our power to prevent something very bad, well, then we've got to do that thing. We've got to prevent those things. So these are going to be the things that we're going to need to prevent, this argument's going to claim. It's just specifying some very bad things. And premise 2, by the way, seems totally plausible. Hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death are very bad.
And like I said, sources of suffering are not necessarily bad. Quite the contrary. You go to a gym, that's a source of suffering for most people. That's usually a very good thing. And much like with your physical muscles, that suffering is bad. Also, the unfortunate reality of the human existence is that suffering is often it gives rise to the ability for growth. Not just physically, but emotionally and maturity in so many different ways. It helps you grow as an individual, as a person. So the assumption that suffering, that I would strongly disagree with incorporating that along with hunger and disease.
Yes, that's plausible. Hunger is very bad. Real hunger, where someone doesn't have enough food to eat. And disease. And other things that cause people to suffer or become disabled or die. All of that is bad. Yep, okay, good job. Premise 2, very plausible. Premise 3, the luxuries on which we spend money are not of moral significance.
Let's hear him flesh it out before I attack that.
So the kinds of luxuries he's talking about are these luxuries, right? Buying new clothes, when your old clothes, although out of fashion or a little tattered or whatever, are perfectly good. Or buying a new car, when your old car, although not as good as a new car, is still a good enough car, right? Or the example that I gave earlier, buying a cup of coffee when you could make the coffee at home. Really going to any restaurant ever, right, counts as a luxury in this sense. I mean, you can always just, for less money, make food at home. This connects with the idea of moral significance, or of some things not being of moral significance, right? Sacrificing anything of moral significance. That's part of the first premise also. So premise 3 is specifying the kinds of things that aren't of moral significance. And once we understand what Singer means by luxuries, he's right. These things are not of moral significance. They're not a big deal. If you go without them, you're not really worse off.
Nope. Stop the train. Nope. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. That all these different luxuries, that what you're defining as being luxuries, which I would agree that many of them are luxuries, let's say like fancy clothing and things of that nature, they are the carrot that motivates behavior that leads towards having the affluence. If you tell people that once you attain that affluence, you are morally obligated to give that affluence away the way communists would. In that case, what you're basically telling them is don't go push yourself the extra mile towards attaining luxury, because you are not going to benefit from it. I mean, unless you're saying that like that makes people evil because they need to have motivation for something that is basically self-rewarding, which is stupid. That's starting with the conclusion. In other words, that's a premise that's starting with the conclusion, because you know that the only way that if you understand anything about human nature and you understand that people are motivated on some level by self-interest, and that's what you're saying, motivation by self-interest is inherently a reflection of evil, you're basically saying, well, I don't like the way humans are hardwired. It's not a matter of your cultural, like, oh, it's because of your culture. And that's the implication which is really bothering me. What he's saying is if you're sitting here living in 21st century America or capitalization, capital society, that you're inherently evil. This is the most backward way of interpreting that. That's human nature. You're saying human nature sucks because there's a natural self-interest that's laced into human nature. So what I would tell you is the fact of the matter is that is what creates an ability for anybody to ever do anything supererogatory. And since that is what is the driving force that enables anyone to ever do something supererogatory, to label that by definition evil is backward. So what you're basically doing is you're taking this element, that's that motivation of self-interest, and you're basically saying, I know everyone has a certain level of self-interest, and that to the degree that anyone has any self-interest that is inherently evil is a ridiculous perspective, because that very same thing is what enables anyone to ever do anything supererogatory and what you're labeling as being good.
By donating money to relief agencies like Oxfam, we could prevent.
What does this guy work for Oxfam? Are they still around, Oxfam? I haven't heard of Oxfam since like the 80s. I never heard of it. It was really big when we had the whole We Are the World thing and all that. They were huge back then. Oh man, Oxfam just sounds like complete communist drivel. Look at this. Oxfam is a global movement of people working together to end the injustice of poverty. That means we tackle the inequality that keeps people poor. Together we serve. This is, oh my God, I would never give money to Oxfam. My God. Their whole agenda here just sounds like so twisted. It's beyond, oh my God. No, this is bad news. This is bad news. Also, let's get a definition of ordinary people. This already takes place in corporate America. At the executive level, money in corporations, charitable giving is mandatory and deducted from your paycheck. It's true. That's true. Good point. Thank you, Steve. That's a great point. Yeah, it is. That is something that, which I am curious how you guys feel. Like, I mean, there's sort of like an obligatory / mandatory type of thing with respect to tipping in general, which I think tipping is obligatory to a degree. Like, you feel like the society has done a very effective job making you feel like complete slime if you don't tip. Putting aside Reservoir Dog scenes, but in general. But then the question comes, the level of tip that you give. And where you find it being obligatory is, I mean, now even on restaurant bills, you'll see like they'll build into it a certain percentage being tacked onto your bill for your whatever your bill is. They'll tack on 15, 18, 20% for your waiter. They have the same thing with Uber and many of these services that they have. There's this tack on. And I'm wondering if you think that tipping is something that's obligatory or is permissive. Because I understand that, yeah, if they spit in your face, you're going to take away the tip. But in general, you're just talking your run-of-the-mill service where there's no hostile interaction with your server, that there's going to be some level of tipping. Do you think that tipping is mandatory in these service industries? Which, by the way, no one ever tips a lawyer. That's just the rule. I don't know why. I take that back. I once got a tip. When I came up with a theory of law that enabled a guy who was about to lose his house to save his house and get a really good settlement with the party that was suing him. He was a diamond dealer, and he gave me as a gift a tennis bracelet to give Lady Logic. But that's the only time I ever really got a tip. I mean, I have one client, which I have a weird relationship with, one of my oldest clients I have a weird relationship with, which it's hard to tell what's tipping and what's actual compensation. We sort of go back and forth with each other. But yeah, it's just not something that's done. People don't tip attorneys. But I am going to ask that question here. Do you think that tipping is in any degree mandatory? Why can't I find tonight's show? Here it is. Start a poll. I'm not going to get to different professions, like barbers or whatever. I'm just going to say, do you think that tipping a service provider is, to some degree, sometimes mandatory? I'm not talking about when they incorporate as part of your bill, but were you having full decision-making power on whether or not to give a tip? That there's still a mandatory thing, like you have to give a tip. You can't step out of it. I'll just leave it as yes, no, like that. See what you guys think on that. I'm really crazy about the way I worded that, but it is what it is. Let's go forward here.
Hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death.
That is pretty
well, that's just saying that there's a very specific way, an easy way, right, to prevent these things which premise 2 established were very bad. Premise 4, is it true? By donating money to relief agencies like Oxfam, we could prevent hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death.
Nope. I mean, yeah, you can, occasionally you can, but like, are you going to end all of them? I mean, could it have some sort of, I mean, I guess you could say saving even one life would be of value. I don't know if I don't like the whole relief agencies like Oxfam, when Oxfam sounds like they're basically promoting socialism, potentially could be more of a hindrance to the world than a benefit.
Yes, premise 4 is true. This is true. These organizations do this. You can give them the money, and then they will prevent these things.
Maybe, I don't know. You're saying that they will. This sounds like a commercial for Oxfam. I'm not saying. I think he's using the example that probably was cited by Peter Singer himself. I don't think he's got a particular affinity for Oxfam, but only because, like I said, Oxfam was much bigger in the 70s and 80s than it is today, from my knowledge. It was much more in mainstream culture, at least.
This premise 4 is just an empirical claim. It's just a claim about whether these organizations actually do the thing that they say they're going to do, and the answer is yes, they do it. Okay, and then here's the conclusion, and we've already reached this conclusion. We've already talked through this conclusion. Therefore, we must. Where is it? Must. We are obligated. It's not supererogatory. It's not extra. This is something you have to do. And so the conclusion gets us something you have to do. We must morally donate the money that we spend on luxuries to relief agencies. And we don't get to spend them on luxuries.
Do people really struggle with debunking this? I thought this was going to be much more of a challenge.
This is the argument. Okay, so now is a good time to re-emphasize how radical this conclusion is. We're about to assess the argument. We're really going to focus almost entirely on premise 1, because premise 1 is the only controversial premise in the argument.
Not the only controversial one. No. Number 3 is controversial.
I mean, everything else, steps 2, 3, and 4, I mean, these just seem to be obviously correct, obviously true statements. And the argument is valid. So, well, 1 is the only option that we could argue against, and we're going to try to argue against it. And Singer is going to say, no, none of those arguments work. Okay, but focusing again on the conclusion for a minute before we get back to premise 1, this is pretty radical. No one thinks that we have a moral obligation. None of your friends, none of your family think that you must not buy a cup of coffee. You must not buy a new car. You must not buy new clothes. Instead, you must take all of that money and donate it to some organization like Oxfam, one of these relief agencies. No one lives their life like this, or very few people. Peter Singer, by the way, he's still alive. I met him, right? We had dinner once. He gave a talk, and then anyway, I know him. I know celebrities. Peter Singer, who's still alive, kind of lives his life like this. He donates a very significant.
He's sitting on the board of trustees for Oxfam. That's what I'm getting from this.
Non-trivial portion of his income, which is not enormous. It's not an enormous income, to relief agencies.
There's another thing he's eliminating also, which is that a lot of the whole issue that people have with giving money away in general. Let's say we find a charity you find a charity that like really resonates with you. It's your pet project, and you're confident that they're spending the vast majority of the proceeds that they take in to the end part of it. Why would you not give away, let's say, 70% of your money to that? And the answer to that is there's a fear about the future, that you don't know what's going to happen with your income and your revenue in the future. So does some of that, now you could say, if you put it in savings bank, he's not calling that evil. He's saying only when you're spending on luxuries for yourself. Okay. Because I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, a large part of what people do with their money is they reinvest it elsewhere with much of their money, or put it away somewhere that they actually have it for a rainy day in case, God forbid, they face a personal calamity, which I don't think anyone would consider that to be evil. That's preservation and self-protection. But to the extent that people are spending on luxuries, which is really his primary focus here, yeah. Okay, let's go forward.
He does not live a luxurious life. Not a life that we would normally
Does
call
he ever get
luxurious.
coffee?
Okay, so there's one. And then maybe there's, I don't know, a few of his friends who he convinced. But most people don't live their life like this. The conclusion of this paper is that most people, you included, are doing something bad.
Yeah, no, it's by his ridiculous standard, which is basically designed to say that natural self-interest is by definition evil. And it's sort of like, this is like the whole concept of, and don't get me wrong, someone can take luxuries to a very unhealthy degree. Obviously, a lot of people, we see amongst particularly celebrities and people who are idolized tend to, spend on themselves with gross extravagance. I'm not defending that. I'm not saying that's justifiable, but there isn't perhaps some level of immorality to that. I mean, when people are basically living a thoroughly lavish lifestyle purely to soak up in the pleasures of this earth, is there something that's morally wrong with that? Yes. Do I think it's the worst of all the moral wrongs that they commit? Almost certainly, definitely not. Like, no way. No, there's a lot more terrible things that they're doing beyond that. That if you want to label the Kim Kardashians of the world evil, there's probably 1,000 worse things that they're doing beyond how they're spending their money. But the idea that everyone, that you, me, everyone who's basically enjoying any trivial luxury is suddenly now should be deigned to be evil by dint of engaging in that luxury is such a ridiculous premise that is the conclusion is based on the premise. He knew that ultimately that people are motivated by self-interest, and he's basically saying that that's immoral. Okay. That happens to be how humans are hardwired. So but it's not like a novel conclusion. It's basically like, I'm assessing that people are motivated by self-interest, and I'm going to come through a whole series of different steps here to basically determine that is morally wrong. That's like saying that people being born with one nose is morally wrong. That's how people are naturally hardwired. And to imply that it's something that's associated with a particular type of culture, that's stupid. Because you think that someone who's living in a non-capitalization culture, someone who's living in a communist country, that they're hardwired differently? Of course not. Obviously not. They're hardwired the same as you or me. The difference is that they're all impoverished. That's the only difference. Aside from the powers that be in those societies.
Every day. And you don't even realize it. Okay, enough about how radical this conclusion is or whatever and how...
Let me get to a couple comments here. No, but I actually like it, brother. No, well, good. Majority of the world hunger is caused by corrupt governments and policy. How does UNICEF use the money to prevent that? They can temporarily feed the hungry, but they hardly address the root cause. And that's a big problem with a lot of these societies. And you have to realize, and here's the thing. The problem that you have also is that they, if they could manage to abolish world hunger or world disease or any other terrible, genuinely terrible thing, like it's almost like then what would they do next? Like it's almost like they so like need the problem to be pervasive in order to have a reason to continue, which makes you question their motivation to actually remedy the situation, rather than remedying the manifestation of the problem, as you're pointing out, Eric the Red. By extension, is it morally wrong to work to your ability and to consume other than your needs? Such a unique idea, individualized socialism. Yep. I like that phrase, individualized socialism. That's good. That's good. That's a good turn of phrase there.
How much it departs from your day-to-day life. Let's get to premise one. This is the controversial premise. What does Singer say to support such a broad, sweeping claim? Here's what he says. This is a rather famous example that Singer gives to support premise one. Here it is. If I am walking past a shallow pond and see a child drowning in it, I ought to wade in and pull the child out. This will mean getting my clothes muddy, but this is insignificant, while the death of the child would presumably be a very bad thing. Okay, got the example, right? There's a shallow pond or a fountain. When I teach this class on campus, every college campus, including the one where I work in North Carolina, every college campus has like a fountain somewhere, right? There's a fountain there. A small child is drowning in the fountain and will die. You are walking by. You can easily step in and save the child. The cost to you will be just a few moments, and, well, your clothes are going to get wet or muddy, right? Muddy if it's a pond, or wet if it's a fountain, or whatever. This sacrifice, by the way, is not of moral significance, right? It is insignificant.
Okay.
That your clothes are going to get a little wet.
Which, okay,
and you're on
it's a wonderful example, but it's the most extreme example. Meaning, you're basically giving, he's using, this is the way Jon Stewart loves to argue. I'm going to give you the most dramatic possible negative and the least possible con, and say, since that, or in that circumstance, everyone would agree that that's what you're obligated to do. Ergo, any other type of bad that's somewhat bad, and any other thing that you're taking for yourself, that con to that, no matter how much more significant it is, is similarly blatantly outweighed.
Your way to something where you didn't want your clothes to be wet. Okay, that's not a very significant sacrifice. But the death of the child, the drowning death of the child, in almost all circumstances, would be a very bad thing. Well,
it's like, and this is trying to imply that every time you buy a cup of coffee, a little baby drowns. That's what this example is trying to pound home to you. Every time you buy a cup of coffee, somebody somewhere dies. That's basically what Singer is professing with this claim.
The thought is, go from this example, if you agree with what Singer says about this example, and I suggest, of course, that you do. If someone just showed up at a meeting and said, hey, there was this kid drowning.
And by the way, the way they won't die is if you give that $1 to Oxfam. So, and let's face it, today a cup of coffee is probably $2 or $3, depending on where you live. But yeah, that $3, if you buy that cup of coffee, someone's going to die. But if instead you give that $3 to Oxfam, somebody's going to live. Really? Really? And that's obvious. And since you're refusing to do that, that makes you an evil person. Okay.
But I didn't want to have wet clothes for this gathering, so I just let the kid drown and die. You would be horrified. You would think that this person was evil, that they had done an evil thing. You would not let your friends or family associate with this kind of person. Well, if you agree with Singer about this...
Oh my God, Project Calm. You just wasted $5 on a super chat. Right now, there's a dead baby in Mongolia because you just burnt this $5 on a super chat. For shame on you, you evil, evil, disgusting, terrible human being. How dare you give money here? I can't believe that. My God, you can almost like smell the corpse. Only the child shares your philosophy and lives as you do. Otherwise, that child will consume resources capable of saving hundreds. Do nothing. All right, well, that was a deep thought. So maybe that was you shared that with the public. Please don't send me any more super chats. I'm worried. I'm worried about little kids in Kazakhstan. Oh my God, there's gonna be like a new fire in Africa. Or in California, all the trees are going to burn and the climate's going to spin out of control unless you give that money to climate change or whatever. My God, you guys are just frittering away money because reasons. Yes. Look at this. Look at this. My God, there's like at least 10 dead trees in California now because you just spent that $2 here. Archangel. You should rename yourself Satan.
Specific case, then Singer says we should be able to abstract from this case to a more general principle, and you should hold this more general principle, and the more general principle is premise one of the argument. The idea is that, well, a child drowning in a pond, that's a very bad thing, but it's not bad because it has to do with water or children. You know, an adult drowning and dying is also a bad thing.
No.
Or even an adult dying by...
Why is that a bad thing? They're evil. Why would that be a bad thing? That's be a good thing. I'm letting people die. Look at you. Look at you, Sam. You just saved the world from another evil person being alive. Because if you would have given that $5 to Oxfam, then that evil person would still be walking the earth. And now, thank God, they fell off a ladder and broke their neck because you didn't give it to the Anti-Slippery Ladder Foundation. Guess the child dead now. Oh wow.
Some other means is a bad thing, right? What's relevant here is not that it's a child or that it's a water involving death. It's that this is a easily preventable death. The death is a bad thing. And the fact that your clothes would...
But if, like I said, if you're coming to a conclusion that all people are evil, I guess maybe communists are good people. Capitalists are bad people. But people living, every poor person living in a third world country, they're the only good ones. You, because you're living in a capitalist society, are by dint of that, they're thereby evil. Oh my God. This is such a circular thing. If you're saying that all people are evil, so in that case, why should we be trying to save people? How is that morally good anymore?
Get muddy, that's a morally insignificant thing. But the fact that it's your clothes and it's mud, that doesn't matter if it's something else that you have to sacrifice. If, for example, instead of your clothes getting wet or muddy, your car is going to get dirty. Or you're going to lose your shoelaces. The shoelaces...
I'm getting really tired. I'm getting really tired of this. They like to play these hypotheticals. Meanwhile, no one mentions the kids that got droned in Afghan that they claim were ISIS-K. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Will be gone forever. You'll have to sacrifice your shoelaces, and you'll have to get whole new shoelaces, and that'll be kind of a pain in the butt. The point is this: the difference between one way of dying and another way of dying, or one morally insignificant sacrifice and another morally insignificant sacrifice, the difference between these doesn't matter. So
why doesn't it matter? Why not? Why not? That's the whole crux of everything. The difference in moral insignificance. Of course it matters. Of course it does. Of course it matters greatly. Because if you strip away any ability to enjoy life, and you say anyone who's enjoying something from life is thereby engaging in luxury, assuming they have to spend any sort of resources on that enjoyment, is thereby engaging in some sort of luxury, you're basically saying we should all turn into miserable drones. In order to be moral. Otherwise, you're immoral.
A specific case like this to a general claim like one. And the thought is, if you agree with Singer about this specific case, then you have to accept premise one of the argument.
Nope. Because I got to tell you something. Someone told you that, hey, in order to save that drowning baby, you have to forego all luxuries for the rest of your life. Probably say no. Say, I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one. For the starving kids in Kazakhstan. Oh my gosh, PFAS. We weren't worried about the slippery ladder, dude.
Okay, so there are two ways in which you might think you can't go from this example to this premise.
Mm-hmm.
Or another way to put this point is you might think that there are two big differences between this shallow pond example and the example of giving up your luxuries, the luxuries in your life, a new car, a cup of coffee, that sort of thing, a massage. There's a difference between this example and giving up those things to save someone from a famine. There's two ways in which there might be a relevant difference. These are the two relevant differences that Singer considers and responds to. Here they are.
All right, let's go, Singer.
Okay, here's the first potentially relevant difference: proximity. In the shallow pond example.
No, I mean, I didn't even come onto either of these. Let's hear what he says these two are. But I'm pretty sure I didn't engage in either of these. But let's go.
You're right next to the child.
Mm-hmm.
You're very close to this child. Whereas in your day-to-day life, you are not right next to, you're not near the people who are dying of famine.
Well, I was debunking this, and I didn't come to anything having to do with proximity. Although there is a concept, there is a general concept that, like, sometimes there is a situation which is impossible to be done by anyone else. So that would create more of a moral obligation. There is something to be said for that. But that's just adding on a new reason for something to become moral, not an excuse to avoid doing something that you're morally obligated to do.
Or of whatever other very terrible things that organizations like Oxfam fight against. Well, is that a morally relevant difference?
What is happening here? When people tell you Ayn Rand's characters are absurd and people that are twisted can't really exist, at least let me know this will support degeneracy. Did you have to send this, Project Calm? Did you have to? Did you know that right now there's like 6 kids in Japan who can no longer read, probably going blind because you sent this $5 super chat? Don't you care? They're going to be bumping into things. They're going to have to start training more dogs to like walk Japanese kids because you didn't send this $5 to stop Japanese blindness. It's corrupt. It's terrible. Did he just say you have to buy new shoelaces? I don't know. Those shoelaces sound like a luxury. They sound like very big luxury. Why can't you walk around with the flopping shoes? I don't understand this. But Adrienne, I'm very disappointed in you. This $5 was one of the most immoral $5 you probably ever spent in your life. Oh my God. Oh my God. Did you not think did you not think about the muskrats living in Madagascar who need shelter? Oh my God. This is craziness. Am I the only one who sees this craziness? Look at this. Wrestler Town. We talked about this. We talked about this. There are baby seals who are losing fur now because you spend $5 here. There are bald baby furs, bald baby seals right now losing their fur. It's like they're dealing with, especially the male baby seals. They're dealing with their male pattern baldness, and we could have cured that if you only sent your $5 to the Cure Male Baby Seal Pattern Baldness Foundation, and instead you're just like frittering away, just setting it on fire. Come across the video earlier, stopped at the dumb donut example. Glad we watched it with you so I can confirm that my pattern recognition is working. What about male pattern baldness though? You didn't worry about that. Didn't worry about that at all, did you? No. This is part of my evil maximization approach to morality. I think it's supposed to help a thought experiment, but I never get to the second part. Look, I happen to like this guy in general, despite the fact that he changed, man to persons. I respect his work. This guy, this presenter here, Peter Singer, I think is a hack. I'm sorry. I'm sure he's been debunked countless times. I'm certainly not the first one to notice these problems here, but he's going on about proximity. So let's let him have his say about that.
Is that a way in which we block this example from generalizing to something like premise one? Singer thinks no. It used to be that proximity.
See, now this is an interesting question, and donation to save Joe's family. That's probably morally a good thing, I guess. That's more, but then you have to sort of go through the whole moral balancing test, because on the one hand, you're saving my family, thank God, and I appreciate that. On the other hand, what about the all of the lame penguins? Like the penguins are missing toes, that we could have built them like, bionic feet or something like that, so they could waddle faster. We could rebuild penguins, and now we're not. If you would have given that $10 to the Rebuild the Penguin Foundation, there are probably countless elephants who we need more elephant reservations. Otherwise, they're probably very uncomfortable. I don't know if you notice this, but elephants, every time you see elephants, almost unless they're giving birth, they seem to be standing up. We don't seem to have enough elephant chairs out there. We need to have a lot more elephant chairs, a lot more elephant couches. I've never seen a single elephant couch. It's very uncomfortable having to get all the way down on the ground. It would be far more convenient for them if we built them that. That would probably be far greater moral good in the world than helping save my family. But I appreciate the thought all the same. Send this man to Japan, let him plead this to them. I hope this is enough to hurt at least a small creature. You just basically punch like 4 cats in the uterus right there with this super chat. I'm sorry, I was thinking about your starving kids. If you get no super chats, you're right. The muskrats are more important. Yes, obviously. No, it's right now some poor little Korean kid has probably forgotten the alphabet because he sent the $5 here. It's really terrible. And you know how many characters there are in the Korean alphabet? I'm sure there's countless. I'm sure it's never ending. My God.
Proximity made a significant moral difference because it used to be that a great distance prevented people from knowing about very bad things. It used to be that if there was some very bad thing happening on the other side of the world several hundred years ago, you could never know about that very bad thing.
Right.
You couldn't find out about it for months or years. But now proximity is irrelevant to your knowledge of very bad things because there's very efficient forms of communication. you can know.
This is just puppy murder at this point. This is just puppy murder. You're sending me $5. It's like you might as well just like start walking around to random pups in your community and just start I don't know, taking their dog bowls away or something like that. Why don't you like just, it's like why don't you start like raging fires in the outback? You know how many kangaroos are probably without a pouch right now because of this $5? It's terrible. It's terrible. And with this $5, another young trans individual forgoes the HRT for another 3 months. Yes, another kid who now is going to be forced to tuck his genitals between his thighs. Oh my God, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's not right. It's not right. You guys are heartless. You're heartless.
Know about a famine going on in another country while it's going on, with enough time to do something about it. Proximity also used to be relevant before these organizations existed. It used to be the case that you weren't able to sacrifice some luxury in order to save someone from a famine because, well, it was very hard to get things across the world, and there weren't organizations set up that had built very efficient systems for taking.
Oh, wait, did I miss this here? No one's worrying about the deaf bats. You know, the African bats who apparently have very difficult time actually hearing, have like no ears. Science trying to do research in order to try and find ways to get them ears. You don't care about that. Instead, you're just throwing away your $2 cars in death. Let's deprive some widows and orphans. No, it's not just the widows and orphans who obviously are now going to go without gruel. It's like that's one less bowl of gruel for an orphan who's obviously going to go to sleep hungry because of you.
A few dollars from you and literally saving a person's life on the other side of the planet. So proximity used to matter. It used to be a morally relevant difference between the pond example and the famine example. But it's not anymore, says Singer.
No, it really is. Because here's the other thing is like proximity makes it hard for us to actually know that someone is being saved. I'm going to tell you something, you know, what's his face had a great bit. What was his name? Oh, he died young after like his 5th wedding. Right after he got married like the 5th or 6th time. The comedian, what was his name? The guy who used to scream. Oh, come on, someone help me out here. From the 80s. Sam Kinison. Thank you, Grifty. Yes, Sam Kinison. He had a whole great bit on world hunger. He had such a great bit on world hunger. Yes. No, Sam Kinison. He had such a phenomenal. He's like, I'm going to ask you. He's like, do me a favor. Do yourselves a favor. Stop sending money for world hunger. Stop sending money for world hunger. Just stop. Save your money. Stop sending it because let me tell you something. They make these commercials. And when they do these commercials, they say, won't you please? They show you this video of all these malnourished little kids in the desert, and they're sitting there with the flies all over them. And they say, won't you please look into your heart? Won't you please send for just 50 cents a day? For 50 cents a day, we can give them food. For just 50 cents. There you are, sitting in the luxury of your comfy Barca lounger, laid back with your feet up, sipping on a supersized Slurpee, while poor little Munka Kuncha here can't even eat a bowl of gruel. What kind of sick fat human are you that you're going to sit there in your lazy boy chair, slurping on in your air-conditioned home, slurping on it, where poor little Unga Hoocha here can't even eat a little. They're so hard. They make you feel like the biggest jerk in the world, and it's so wrong. First of all, you sit there. I'm sitting there. I'm watching this commercial. I'm thinking to myself, the cameraman's right there. Why can't you give him a Snickers? Give him something. Throw something at him. They're like, no, don't feed him yet. Don't feed him yet. Don't feed him yet. We got to get the shot. He's like, you know what? You know what we should be doing? Instead of actually sending them food, we should go out there with a convoy of trucks. And send me out there. That's what you need to do. Send them out and say, hey, you, listen to me. We're thinking about the whole problem you got here with this, terrible world famine. And what we realize is that the reason that there's world hunger is because you people don't live where the food is. You live in a desert. You know what's here? Sand. You know what this is going to be 100 years from now? Sand. We got a whole bunch of U-Haul trucks over here. Get your kids. Get your gear. We're getting out of here. We got deserts in America. We just don't live in them. It's so good. I didn't even do that justice, but oh my God, that was so good. Yeah. That is one. So I guess that ties into a super chat that someone sent me earlier at the cost of of some sort of push sled for a lame dog to basically walk on, that he's now going to have to limp along the gravel now because of somebody's super chat pointing out that all these agencies are interested in just putting a Band-Aid on a problem rather than actually fixing it. But yeah. Just drank 6-pack of Bud Light. You're done. You're done. Oh my God. Get the wig. Get the wig. Start manscaping, or get your nair or whatever. A 6-pack of Bud Light. Oh my God. It's like, did your voice drop 19 octaves or something like that? Or all of a sudden, are you singing falsetto? Do you have an eyelash curler now? Please stop the show and celebrate my first day of girlhood. If you donate to my fake tatas, you can motivate them to make sure the money was well spent. Thank you, Britt, for the sundress. Oh my God, no. Oh my God, no. I cannot condone such activity. Let's go, Joe. Yeah. No, but the problem is this. The problem with all these things is, you don't really feel that you're making that difference. So that's where the proximity really is a genuine issue. Because if I knew that if I sent my $5, or I guess if you knew that if you sent your $5 super chat out to Swahili, that all of a sudden that the hyenas there would no longer have to suffer with too many fleas, and we would finally deflea all the hyenas in Swahili or even Botswana, you might actually send it. But you don't get to see the fleas. You don't get to see the relentless scratching that the hyenas do, or the wailing that they're doing through the night because the fleas are just biting and biting and biting at their skin. So it doesn't really feel like such a huge problem to you that gets remedied by your $5. And quite the contrary, you sit there and you're like, I can actually see the super chat. It comes up there on the screen eventually whenever Joe gets around to it. So I'm actually seeing the impact that I'm having there, but I don't see the hyenas. I don't see them. I don't see anything coming out of it. I don't see those little baby roos who are born nebuch, poor little kangaroos that are born with mothers who don't have a fully developed pouch and are forced to hang in the teeth because we can't surgically enhance they don't have the money to surgically enhance all the kangaroos to give them a really healthy, majestic kind of pouch. And instead the mothers are forced to pick them up by the mouth and just sort of bob around with them like that. But maybe if you saw the kangaroos, the pouchless kangaroos, you'd be far more inspired to actually send them the money. And that's the proximity issue right there. That's the proximity issue right there. It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. The pouchless ruse.
So,
oh, there we go. Hold on a second. I got a few more super chats here to hit on. This F has never read the book. The Graves Are Walking about the Irish famine in the 1840s. People understood at the time government got in the way. Yeah, I was going to say, if you're curing the Holodomor situation, okay, that's fine. Although in that situation, actually, I think Stalin was intentionally keeping the food from the people. But that's exactly the point. It's like, well, he's keeping the food from the people, so let's airdrop food in there instead of actually, finding a way to get him to stop doing that. But Peter Singer is basically saying you're just like Stalin. You're keeping the food from the people because you decided that you were going to get a spray tan. Meanwhile, Gary Torgo, chairman of Huntington Bank, gave about $7 worth of Pesach food to every family in Detroit that signed up. Cases of stuff. Wow. Good man. Good mensch. Kicking puppies for capitalism. Amen. Can I give a shout out to one of the best songs out there, Baldo Man, Nick Ricada tribute song by Electric Ham Sandwich? I never heard of it. I know Baldo Man by Electric Ham Sandwich. I don't know that song. Is it a really good song? I don't know.
this difference of proximity does not prevent your intuition, your thoughts, your moral thoughts about an example like this from translating over to a very general claim like one. Here's the other potential difference. If you're trying to block this example from getting the result, ultimately...
If you're trying to block that example, you don't have a brain to realize how flawed that example is in trying to prove number one. Well, here's another way you could try to block it. But it's like, it's such a bad example to try and establish legitimacy, number one. In case you just joined the last 5 minutes and you're wondering why I seem to be like mocking, the concept of knitting sweaters for polar bears. It's because basically this is a theory that was put out there by Peter Singer 51 years ago, which comes to the conclusion that all people are evil. And how do we know that all people are evil? Because he has a whole series here of 4 different steps, and he basically says that there's a moral obligation that if you have any excess money at all, that you should be giving it away to charity. And if you're spending it on yourself at all, that makes you inherently a bad person. And the proof of this is that the mild inconvenience is something that's not considered morally significant, that is something that you must put aside in order to do something of moral significance. And he gives the example of if you see an infant drowning in a pond that's like 2 feet deep, that you have a moral obligation to get your pants wet and dirty and muddy in order to save that human life. And while everyone would agree with that example, obviously, that's a very, very long way from saying that you should never, ever, 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 ever have any luxuries in your life at all, but should give all that money to charity. Otherwise, you're a terrible person. Because there's so many problems with that jump that he just made like a little arrow over here to make to here to there. He's trying to say, well, maybe one problem is proximity to others that others can do it. No, that's not it. It's that it's stupid. It doesn't make any sense at all. The reason you have any of that excess is because you were motivated by personal self-interest to develop that excess that you could use to spend on others. If not for the fact that you knew that if I work hard, instead of sitting on my butt and taking a government check, but if I work hard and actually attain something, I can buy nicer clothing. So then to say, well, when you're buying nicer clothing, you're a bad person is absurd. It is asinine. So really what Peter Singer is doing is he saw that people are motivated to act by self-interest. And then it says, you're a bunch of evil capitalists, pretending that people who are living in socialized country would not do precisely exactly the same thing if they were in a capitalist country, because that is how human nature works. We are motivated by self-interest. You want to label that bad? Okay, fine. You could say original sin is bad also if you want to. Or you could say, hey, this is the nature of how humans are and have been for thousands of years. You want to label that nature evil? Okay, that's not novel. You don't have to go through 4 steps to do that. You could just say, hey, I think that's an evil thing. But try and pretend that every luxury you spend on yourself is now suddenly somehow evil is asinine. And it's also a lie, because you're going to engage in some luxuries yourself ultimately as well. I don't care how much charity this guy gives. There's going to be some, you could spend a little less on the new pants that you're getting. Well, son, we're supposed to think he's Mother Teresa because he gives money to charity. Just cut the act. Cut the act.
That you have to give up all the luxuries in your life. You might say, look, in this shallow pond example, we're led to assume that there's no one else that could save the child. There are no others who are capable of saving the child. But in the case of famine relief, anyone could give money to Oxfam, right? There's all these other people present.
This whole thing about Oxfam is really a little unsettling, because Oxfam, as we looked it up here, is really advocate for socialism. Like this was a whole commercial for Oxfam that made me re-examine Oxfam and come to the conclusion that Oxfam is a place I would never send money to.
Well, in the cases where there's all these other people present, it doesn't fall on you. You don't get the obligation to be the one who, saves someone's life when they're dying of famine. Here's what Singer says in response to that. He says, look, the presence of others who could help is sort of relevant because their presence typically leads to their actually helping, those other people actually helping prevent the very bad thing.
That's not even the best counter to this that Singer would have. The best counter he would have is like, no, the problem is that there's an never ending. The real counter that Singer should bring is, in our life circumstance, it's not one baby that's drowning, it is millions of babies, and there are not enough others to get it done.
So if there were other people who saw the child drowning in the shallow pond, well, then very likely one of those other people would save the child, and then you wouldn't have to save the child. And if then you showed up and you at the meeting and said, hey, there was this kid drowning in the pond, and whoever was going to go in and save the kid was going to get their clothes wet, and someone says, your clothes aren't wet. Are you an evil monster? And you say, no, there were other people there, and someone else saved the kid. And they'd say, oh, okay, wow, that must have been something. Let's get on to our frat party or whatever we were about to do. The point is, the presence of others is only relevant if those other people are going to do something. If they're not going to do anything, then it seems like, at least to Singer, the obligation is on you. If there's other people who are able to see that this child is drowning, but these other people care a great, great deal about getting their clothes wet or muddy, and they're not going to step in to save the child, and you know this, and they say this to you, well, does the fact that they're there and they could save the child excuse you from your duty to save the child? No. If you show up at the meeting and you say,
and that's a fair
I was going to
point.
save this kid,
My
but
point
there were these
is,
other people
that's
there.
not his best counter argument.
Who saved the child? And you say, no one saved the child. The child drowned. The child is dead now.
But this is not trying to defeat.
Everyone would say,
this is not trying to defeat the argument number one. It's basically saying it's a lame attempt to try and offset argument number one, when argument number one is offset by far more stronger arguments that I've repeated ad nauseum.
you're a monster. You're an evil person. You should have saved the child. You say, yeah, but there were other people there. Doesn't matter. The other people didn't do anything about it. So that means you have to do something about it. The fact that there are other people who could help in the case of famine, in the case of a drowning child, is itself irrelevant. What matters is if someone else does help, and then there's no more need for you because all the children have been saved or all the people have been saved from famine. A lot of people donate to organizations like Oxfam, some amount of money or other, but
too many.
There's still plenty of people left.
And by the way, while I am bashing on Oxfam specifically, I don't want anyone to take this as me saying that all charities are bad. Quite the contrary. There are innumerable amazing charities which actually do really good work, and anyone who's giving money that they can afford towards these charities, I say, God bless you. You're doing a good thing. I urge you, before you donate, you actually look into two things. First and foremost, you should do research to find out what percentage of the monies actually end up helping, rather than just going toward overhead. Because a lot of too many organizations bloat their overhead, and they can be bloating their overhead, but basically saying, "Oh yeah, our CEO has to get paid $500,000 a year," and especially some of the more famous ones. And I'm not going to call anyone out. I'm simply saying, do your own research before you give money. But if you do research and find one that's doing work that you support, God bless. I think that's a noble thing. That's a good thing.
Who need to be saved. And so you have an obligation to them, according to Singer. The fact that there are other people who aren't helping also, that just seems totally irrelevant. Okay, a few ending notes. One, how much do we have to give? I mean, it's one thing to give up, 1 cup of coffee, right? Made at a...
Well, that's the point, is that the implication is you have to give everything, every cup of coffee. Are you the service provider? I guess in this, are you talking about TikTok? I'm not sure what we're talking about service provider. Oh, in my thing, I forgot. You see, this is good. So I am notoriously bad at checking up on my my polls. Do you think that tipping a service provider is some degree sometimes mandatory? 42% of you said no. Wow, I did not expect there to be that many. I do think I think it's sometimes mandatory. Like, I think it's mandatory. I actually would have said yes on this one, which 58% of you said yes. No, I don't consider myself a service provider in this context. It's definitely not mandatory that anyone tip me. Even though I thank you, Brian, and many others of you who have tipped me. I say thank you.
A fancy coffee place, right? But do I have to give up all the coffee that I might ever buy?
Thank you.
Do I have to never buy coffee and never get a new car and never get new clothes? Am I allowed no luxuries at all? Do I have to give away so much of my money that I'm reduced to the level of the person who's suffering from this famine or near to that level? Singer says, maybe yes. He considers 2 versions of premise 1. Right?
He's a classic socialist. He's a classic socialist.
Right? And this is more specific, and it's in the paper. I think it happens on, where does it happen? It happens on page 231. He considers 2 versions of premise 1, a stronger principle and a weaker principle. And this is the weaker one, right? According to the weaker principle, you just have to give up some luxuries. You don't have to reduce yourself all the way down to the level that's near equivalent to the people that you're saving. But according to the stronger principle, you do. And Singer actually thinks this argument basically works for the stronger principle. You have to give up.
Doesn't work even on the weaker principle. But here in Singapore, tipping is really, really rare. Interesting. That is probably a cultural thing. It probably makes sense. And hello, Singapore.
Wow. Here's an objection, an additional objection that Singer considers. He considers this on pages 236, 237, 238, if you're looking in the text. This is just too demanding. This is too much to ask for people to give up all these things. To that, Singer says a couple things. One thing he says is, look, that is a standard, objection to utilitarianism. And Singer is himself a utilitarian, or at least he's a consequentialist. I can't remember. Anyway, he's close to a utilitarian, and he could be for the purposes of this paper. So, well, it's a standard objection against utilitarianism that it's too demanding. But Singer just thinks that this is a very weak objection. Maybe morality is very demanding. The argument seems to work.
It really didn't make it like 5 minutes off the ground, but
the fact that you don't like the conclusion, which
no,
is really
the fact that it's contrary to
demanding
human nature. It seems it was painted as if this is an attack on capitalism specifically, and the answer is that capitalism actually accounts for human nature, and you just don't like human nature.
Comes to the fact that you don't like the conclusion is not an argument.
You might not like gravity, but that it doesn't change what it is.
That the conclusion is false. He considers another argument. This is on page 239.
Oh my God!
Another argument
He's
that
like
goes
quoting
like
this
this.
like it's the
If
Bible.
private individuals start donating money to famine relief, then governments will stop. And if governments stop donating money because the private individuals have got it taken care of, well, then very bad things will result. There won't be enough money because the governments are the real source of the money or whatever. Singer responds to this. Part of his response is to just say, don't worry about it. Not that many people are going to start giving. It's not going to prevent governments.
What? First of all, governments are giving from the people anyway, so I'm not sure what that even means. And he's like, but you're advocating for what's a healthy lifestyle. You shouldn't. You're advocating for what's moral, what's immoral. That's not supposed to be based on consequences to what percentage of people are going to buy your stupid theory.
From donating money.
And again, I'm not saying
it's
this guy's stupid theory. It's not. It's not Jeffrey Kaplan. This is Jeffrey Kaplan who's talking. It's not his stupid theory. It's Peter Singer's stupid theory.
That's not enough to affect how much governments give. You're not going to solve this problem on your own. And if your only objection is, hey, if I give all my money, I'll totally solve the problem, that's just a weak objection. Yes, you'll totally solve the problem. Good, solve it. The last objection that Singer considers, this happens on page 240 in the.
He should have. There's a lot of objections he should have considered, but didn't. Singer, Daf Lamed Famine Beis loud. Yeah, that's what he is.
Reading is the thought that, well, look, if you donate all this money to famine relief, it's just famine relief. It's going to help these people. It's going to save their lives.
And it's not actually solving the problem.
There'll be another famine in a few years from now. Maybe in that place, maybe in a different place. You're just postponing these famines. Singer says, no, you're not. Those famines are going to happen one way or another. And if you donate the money to help people who are dying of this famine today, and when he wrote this paper in 1972, there was a specific famine that he was talking about. If you donate the money, you will save these particular people's lives. And the fact that there's going to be more famines in the future, maybe that affect these people, maybe that affect other people, it just seems irrelevant. Think back to the shallow pond example. This child is drowning in the pond. You don't want to get your pants wet or muddy. So you say, well, look, if I say...
I got a few tippers over here that I gotta catch up on. Trigger of Oz says, every time a bad thought, you get $1. Oh no. Why would you have bad thoughts? Johnny says, I'm an hour behind listening during work. The government banning this is stupid. It's giving them babysitting powers. Soda leads to a lot of health issues, but won't ban soda from food stamps. People need to be more accountable for themselves and children. Crimes are for when someone infringes on others' rights and do so there isn't mob justice. We have Governor. Did Montana ban transing children or just do a PR bill like most of the worthless politicians? This banning things war needs to stop. I'm with you on that. He also says there's so many things that are harmful in life, and these politicians picked the low-hanging fruit to pretend they care. Which politicians are calling for investigation into vaccines and antidepressants? Which ones call for accountability for the administration of schools that have failed and abused children? And the list goes on. They know his TikTok ban will be struck down, what makes them look good. All right. Well, there you go. Let me make sure to miss over here. Yeah. Mouse man. He does look a little bit like a mouse.
Save this child now, then this child is probably just going to stumble.
I agree with you, Real
Patriots
Patriots Party. There's a little bit of.
You would seem absurdly callous. You would seem evil. Singer says you would be evil. And if you don't donate all of this money that you spend on luxuries, then you are evil. That's what Singer says. Okay, so I think we can agree that the conclusion of this argument is radical. It's wild. It seems
Stupid.
to show
That's
that
another word.
everyone that you know
It's stupid.
is a terrible person, is roughly as terrible as someone who would let a child drown.
No,
and die.
not even. That is such a false
Because they didn't-
equivalency that I'm getting very annoyed by it. That is such a ridiculously false equivalency. It really is. It's a very false equivalency. It also doesn't highlight all the problems with number 2, 3, and 4 that I identified an hour ago.
Didn't want to get their clothes muddy. That's what the argument seems to show. That's a new thing. Like, you probably don't think that you and your family are evil, but the argument seems to show that. It's a very radical conclusion, and the problem is it's very hard to see what's wrong with the argument.
No,
The argument
it's not very hard.
seems like a good one,
Mm.
and it has seemed that way to everyone who read this paper since 1972.
Well, you just found your first exception to that.
There are responses to it, and there are philosophers who try very hard and have very clever, careful things to say to try to show that this argument doesn't actually work.
Well, your whole comp here to a baby drowning in a pond is such a ridiculous comp that it's kind of comical that anyone's struggling. But I think that's really overstating. I'm sure a lot of philosophers before yours truly came along were able to show the flaw in that whole argument. But I don't know. Maybe we can take care of all the flea-ridden hyenas in the Sahara. I would take the sad dogs with the Arms of the Angels song playing for an hour over this guy any day.
But at least until we get to read some of those arguments,
What?
you should try to see if there's anything wrong with this argument yourself.
I think I did. All right. I need to get me one of them glass things and learn how to write backwards the way he does, because that's pretty impressive skill. All right.
Peter Singer, by the way,
Uh-oh.
he's still alive. I met him, right? We had dinner
Yeah.
once. He gave a talk, and then I know him. I know celebrities.
Oh, that's what he was. All right.
So far in this course, we've only been talking about one moral.
I got to go through more of this stuff. I'm not doing it tonight, but oh my God, I got to go through more of his stuff. I got to break down his moral theories. My God, this is like perfect for viewers' discretion. All right. I think that's our show for tonight. God willing, tomorrow evening, somewhere around like 10, 11, maybe a little later, I plan to have another show. Make sure that you hit like and subscribe. Otherwise, you might miss something important. And you might end up walking away thinking that people are evil or something like that. And that's why I'm here, to rid the world of that type of stupidity. What else we got here? I would take this ad. Oh, we got this one. If I were to throw another kid in the pond, if I'm evil, let's be really evil. You got the picture for it, Sigurd. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. And yeah, let's throw more kids in ponds. Teach them how to swim. Teach them how to swim. Otherwise, they're never going to swim. Wow, this guy is a tool. Yeah. I think he's just explaining Singer's theory. And maybe he didn't spot all the issues that I spotted. But all right, so make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. I will be back here, God willing, tomorrow evening around 10, 11, midnight, somewhere around there. I'm going to be driving home. Also, locals. I will be doing a live stream on locals tomorrow while I'm driving back at some point. Last time I came up with some really deep thoughts, some questionable sort of stuff. My video there that I was talking about, the second one, if you haven't watched anything that I was talking about while I was doing my drives, I would recommend start with the second one, not the first one. You go to my locals, which is goodlogic.locals.com, and you go to that video there, and basically the second one, about 20 minutes to a half hour in, is where all of a sudden I got very philosophical about women and women's rights. I think that's what I was talking about. I'm trying to remember what the heck I was talking about. But I actually had I remember. I was talking this concept about not eating veal. It was a very and the nature relationship between men and women And I think it was I started fixating that. Now I'm remembering. I was talking about how you view a situation changes everything about whether that situation is a positive or a negative. And I was focusing on a video of Ben Shapiro reacting to clips from the Whatever show that I was like, and I was walking through the mindset that leads people to thinking that there are problems when there are none. But yeah, so I would recommend go to the one which is like the second driving video that I did a few days back, and yeah, when you do that, I think it was on Tuesday or so, and start like 20 minutes, a half hour in, you'll get a lot of it. You'll have a good time with it. All right, that's our show. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Last one here. Wait, you're not a shill for Oxfam, are you? God forbid, no. Oh my God, no. Never, never. All right, I will see you all tomorrow on Locals. Make sure you're there. Godspeed.